23 presidential candidates are in Des Moines for the Iowa State Fair. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns caught up with Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard and asked her about what she's learned in Iowa.
I know you've been kind of walking around the fair, playing some of the games.
Yeah.
You've spent some time in Iowa. What have you been learning since campaigning here?
People here in Iowa take their responsibility very seriously as being one of the first states in the nation to vote. And there's a lot of untold stories that we're not hearing in Washington. I think especially when we talk to some of these farmers who are here at this fair, who are really concerned about the uncertainty that this trade and tariff war is having on them and their families and their ability to provide. This is something that we've got to address, and this is something that I think it's important to point out in the different kind of leadership that you see from President Trump versus what you'd see from a Gabbard administration, where we deal with these challenges in a way that provides stability and certainty, so we're able to work out our differences without waging an all-out, unpredictable economic war. It's having a lot of problems and creating a lot of hardship for folks here.
Right, hearing a lot about trade from voters here. Is there anything, though, that the president is doing on trade that you would identify with in principle?
I agreed with his decision to withdraw from the TPP trade deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was something that I opposed under the previous administration because ultimately it was bad for American jobs. It did not provide protections for our environment, and most importantly, it created this panel of international corporations who would be able to overrule laws in our own country, essentially giving up our sovereignty. To me, that was unacceptable, so that was one decision that Trump made that I agreed with. However, what he has done since then in waging these trade wars is something that I'm deeply concerned about, because the damage that is coming about as a result is not just short term. You know, you look at these farmers, they're planning years out for their crops and their investments. You look at manufacturers, small business owners, they've got to plan ahead, and his unpredictable, shoot from the hip approach is something that is actually counterproductive to the interests of our country.
So more about certainty, basically. I want to ask, have you heard the comments that Joe Biden made last night, or a slip-up that he made last night, talking to a group, and he said, poor kids deserve as much as white kids, and then he corrected himself, saying that he wanted equality for all kids. You haven't heard much about that. Do you have any comments about?
No, I don't.
About that. And then when we're focused here in Iowa, this is a state that President Trump won after Obama won it twice. How do Democrats win back some of these areas? Or do you think that they should be focused on places where their support is growing?
Look, doing what I'm doing and focusing on people. Rather than looking at the partisan lines that are being drawn, that are unfortunately driving deeper and deeper wedges between our country, what I'm focused on in my campaign and the leadership I'll bring is one that puts people ahead of the partisan politics, that puts people ahead of profits, and really bringing those values of service above self to the White House, because that's really what people want. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, you want to know that the President of the United States is going to have your back, that they're going to fight for you, and they'll serve your interests above all else. That's what I'm offering here. That's why I'm running for president, and I think that's how we defeat Donald Trump in 2020 to begin to bring about the big change we need to see.
You're a member of Congress, obviously. The issue of gun control. Mitch McConnell said that he will take it up after the recess. Do you think that's sufficient? And given your experience on Capitol Hill, as president, what would you do differently to make changes on this issue? Lots have tried and been unsuccessful.
Well, first of all, as you know, we in the House already passed the universal background check bill, passed a bill that would close the Charleston loophole and other common sense pieces of gun safety legislation that the vast majority of Americans support, and really just seek to do that, to make sure that we've got safe communities, that our kids are safe when they go to school. These bills are sitting in the Senate waiting for Mitch McConnell to bring them to a floor for a vote. There is no excuse for waiting another day before bringing the Senate in and passing these pieces of legislation. I think it's important also to point to why hasn't this happened sooner, and it speaks to a deeper divide in this country of us versus them, one side pitted against the other, and where we need both leaders in Washington and people in this country to come together and recognize that you can stand up for and protect our Second Amendment rights while also standing up for and protecting the safety of our kids, of our friends, our neighbors, our families. This is what we need to do and how we can come together as a country to accomplish that. It doesn't mean one side is a threat to the other, because ultimately I think we want the same things.
And then some candidates have called the president a white supremacist. Do you agree with that?
You know, what I think is more important to focus on, rather than what Trump is or isn't, is how he is using the platform in the office of the presidency to foment racism in this country, to fuel this kind of bigotry that can, as we see, ultimately lead to violence. The divisiveness has got to stop. We've got to recognize we can disagree even strongly on different issues. We've got to come together around the common values and principles that we share as Americans. This is who we are, and this is where we've got to go as a country to protect each other and protect our freedoms.
And what are you looking most forward to at this fair?
I'm just looking forward to continuing to get around. I know there's a lot of food, there's a lot of games, there's a lot of people who've come from around the country to come here to this fair, and looking forward to our soapbox conversation here soon.
Great, thank you so much. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you.